getting closer to the big day, folks, so let's talk about this 90s era slasher film. Let's get into it. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well out there. Today we're going to talk about a 90s slasher film. But before we talk about that film, do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here. I would appreciate that. Today we're going to talk about that film right there. I Know What You Did Last Summer. I was not planning on reviewing this for my Halloween season reviews, but I just picked up that 4K from Sony Pictures, and I gotta say, the transfer and the sound design they did on this are spectacular. The picture looks amazing, better than the film's ever looked, and all the special features are ported over from the old Blu-ray. There's 2 new special features on the 4K disc. There's a director with the director, Jim Gillespie, and it's pretty interesting. I watched it, and there's an interview with Muse Watson, who played Ben Willis, or the fisherman, our main bad guy in this film. So if you like this film, I think it's on sale right now on Amazon for like 21 something. It's actually worth the upgrade if you do like that film like I do, which we'll get into more right now. So yeah, it's definitely a worthwhile disc to pick up if you're a fan of this film. Now, this film was written by Kevin Williamson. He wrote this script before Scream was even made. He was shopping this around, couldn't get it made. He went off to write Scream, teamed up with Wes Craven, had a huge hit in his hands, and right after that movie hit as big as it did, Sony Pictures quickly acquired that script and rushed it in production. Now, they picked a first-time filmmaker to direct this film, Jim Gillespie. He had done a short film and he worked behind the scenes on movies, but he'd never done a feature film himself. He's from Scotland. He'd done a small short film called Joyride, and Kevin Williamson had seen the movie and he recommended him to the producers, and they brought him in to direct this film. Now, we got a who's cast of 90s actors and actresses here. First of all, Jennifer Love Hewitt plays Julie James. She was on Party of 5 at the time when this movie was made. Sarah Michelle Gellar plays Helen Shivers, and she was on Buffy at the time. Ryan Philippe plays Barry. He was a relatively new actor to Hollywood, but he'd done a few things. Freddie Prinze Jr. plays Ray. Him and Julie are boyfriend and girlfriend in this film, and Barry and Helen are boyfriend and girlfriend at the beginning of this film, and they're all good friends. Anne Heche plays Melissa. She's not in this film a lot, but she just helped the kids connect the dots to who might be doing or stalking them. And she only worked on the film for 2 days. And Muse Watson plays Ben Willis, or the fisherman. He is the killer here. This is a spoiler review. This movie's been out for a very long time, so let's get into this. Now, this film dropped October 17th of 1997. It's rated R. It's an hour and 41 minutes long. Had a budget of $17 million. And upon release, this was a nice size hit for Sony. This is why they rushed I Still Know What You Did Last Summer into production. It was out a year later. It made 72 in America and 125 worldwide, which isn't bad for an R-rated slasher film. And Kevin Williamson had 2 hits on his hands. And that December after this, Scream 2 came out because that was rushed into production because of the success of Scream 1. So Kevin Williamson was hot at around this time. And then he had Dawson's Creek hit the airwaves in 1998. I graduated in 97. I remember going to see this that October. So I was in prime age to see this film because everybody in this film is a senior in high school, at least in the beginning of the film. Right in the beginning of the film, we open up with this great helicopter shot over these cliffs. The beginning of the film, everything on the cliffs and that winding road along the cliffs in the ocean was shot in California up by Bodega Bay. Everything else, the town stuff and all that, was shot in North Carolina, about 2 hours from where I stand right now. So that's kind of cool, and this film takes place in North Carolina, just like Dawson's Creek does. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of the film, we're introduced to this guy. We see this young man hanging out on the cliffs, on the rocks, drinking, and then we cut to our 4 main leads, and they're at this celebration. The Kroger pageant just got over. Helen had won the crown. She is the queen of the Kroger pageant this year. There's fireworks going off. The town's having a big celebration for the 4th of July, and they decide to go to Dawson's Beach to hang out and have a bonfire. And Dawson's Beach was Kevin Williamson's way of to Dawson's Creek, which would come out a year later. And they're telling urban legend stories to each other, trying to freak each other out. And then they're driving home. Ray's driving because he didn't drink. Barry's drunk. And Barry drops the bottle while Ray is driving. Ray is distracted and end up hitting this guy. It's in the middle of the road. And they think he's dead. So they make a pact to dump the body in the ocean and never speak of it again because they know their lives are over if they say anything, because the whole car smells like booze and Barry's drunk off his ass. And that is what starts the ball rolling into why they get stalked a year later when they come home from college. Now, we see Julie. She's off of college. Her grades have suffered. And in the beginning of the film, they set up that she's really smart. And she's all pale now, and she doesn't go out much. And she still thinks about that fateful night. She goes back home for the summer. I know what you did last summer. And her mother's asking her about her grades and whatnot. And she reconnects with Helen because she gets a note in the mail and says, "I know what you did last summer," which kind of freaks her out, thinking, did somebody see us that we didn't know? Because there was one kid that saw the Max, played by Johnny Galecki, who was in Big Bang Theory and Christmas Vacation, but they didn't think he saw anything. So she goes to Helen, who was planning to go to New York and be a model or an actress. Here, it didn't work out. She's working for her sister in their family department store in town, which actually is a cool store. It's cool that a little town would have a store like that still to that day, and even in the late 90s, because stuff like that was starting to close. And Helen's like, I don't know. Let's go talk to Barry. He's home. So they go talk to Barry, and he doesn't know what's going on, but they think it's Max. So Barry goes to threaten Max or scare him, which doesn't probably go the way he thought. But Max gets killed right after Barry leaves with a pretty cool shot with the killer uses a hook, goes up through his throat, and they pull him across the table, and there's blood everywhere. That was shot after the film was done production. They actually added that later to up the gore factor because they didn't film a lot of violence for this film. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And basically, Barry gets hurt because he gets run over by his own car. He breaks his arm. And soon they realize somebody is trying to fuck with them. And they're trying to figure out who it may be. So they're trying to track down who this could be, this mystery man could be. And eventually, Barry gets killed. Helen gets killed in an awesome chase scene, which is the highlight of this film, I do believe. And then finally we realize it's this fisherman, Ben Willis, who's been stalking them because that's the person they hit, not this David Egan who they thought they hit and was killed that same night. Here we find out David Egan, who we meet his sister Melissa, played by Anne Heche, was committed suicide because he was so depressed. Well, she thinks he committed suicide, but we find out Ben Willis actually killed him that night. And he was leaving the crime scene, and that's when the kids hit him, because David and Ben Willis's daughter used to date, and David killed her by accident, and Ben held him responsible, and that's what set forth all of the shit that's going on. It's very convoluted, but it's kind of fun and cheesy all at the same time. And we had that final scene on the boat. Ray has to help Julie survive. Ben gets his arm caught in this net, gets his hand taken off. He flies into the ocean and never find a body. And at the end, we get that stinger where the fisherman flies out of the glass in the shower room at Julie, and that's the end of I Know Did Last Summer. What to like about this film? I think the cast is really good here. Jennifer Love Hewitt's good. She's very likable. Sarah Michelle Gellar is good here as well. I've always liked her as an actress. It's a shame she hasn't done much the last few years. Ryan Phillippe is a guy, when he shows up, I usually enjoy his performances. Freddie Prinze Jr. is very likable as the everyman. Anne Heche is only in a few scenes, but she's good with what she's given to do. Everybody here is pretty damn good. Jim Gillespie does a nice job with the directing. From that opening helicopter shot on the cliffs in the ocean, rocking out the Typo Negatives' Summer Breeze. I love that song, and I love that shot. Sets the tone for the whole film. I love the small town setting. I love how these kids' lives don't turn out the way they thought they were going to turn out. Everybody has been affected by this decision that they made. And it's a cautionary tale at the end of the day, thrown in with a slasher film. Willis as a killer, he's okay. The fisherman outfit is not the most iconic outfit. It works here because they live in a fishing village, and there's a bunch, and there's a scene with a red herring where Barry's chasing this guy who Helen thinks is the killer, and it's just this old guy going back to his boat. It's not the most iconic costume, but it works okay here. It's not the greatest, but it's fine. We'll deal with, it's okay here. It's not the greatest get up, but it's okay. Some of the kills are okay. The chase scene with Helen and the fisherman going through the alley, across the main street to her department store, in her department store after the fisherman kills her sister. That's all good stuff. It's a great chase scene. It builds to the crescendo. It's well done. And then we get the payoff with the fisherman getting her at the end. She thinks she escaped, and he doesn't. She doesn't, and he ends up killing her feet from where the parade's going through town. Like, she's literally just out of sight from the parade goers, and she's getting killed to death. She's getting stabbed with the hook to death. And I always like that scene. It's definitely the standout moment of this film. There's some dumb shit like Jennifer Love Hewitt in the road with her arms out screaming, "What are you waiting for?" They even brought it back in the next film. I still didn't do it last summer. It's not any better than the next one. Matter of fact, it makes it worse because that movie's not as good. I like the way it's shot. Jim Gillespie does a nice job with the film. He keeps the pace moving. There's intrigue there. When they do show the killer, though, it's a person that you don't really know. Like, you never meet him throughout the film. So the whodunit aspect is kind of, usually in a whodunit, you've met the person who's doing the killing at some point during the film. In this film, you don't meet him until the end of the film, when our finale comes around, and that final chase on the boat, on the fishing boat and all that. So A true whodunit, I don't know if you can consider that, because really, where they are trying to figure out who's fucking with him, but honestly, you don't even know this character until the end of the film. And then when he reveals himself, then you get the rest of the plot, why he did what he did, and then he's just taking revenge on them because they hit him and dumped him in the drink. So, some of that doesn't work. There's some plot holes here. There's some dumb, cheesy shit. But overall, I've always enjoyed this film. It's a solid slasher film. It's solidly directed. I like the music. I like the actors here. They're all doing pretty damn good. At the end of the day, it's an enjoyable 90s slasher film, and definitely one that got made if it wasn't for the success of Scream. So at the end of the day, I would give that film right there an 8 out of 10. Yeah, an 8 out of 10 here. Now, this was based on a novel by Lois Duncan. She hates that film because she blames Kevin Williamson for basically turning her novel into a full-blown slasher film. Max's death was added after production. They watched the film, they tested it, and they realized they needed a little bit more violence. And the blood when he slashes her sister in a department store, that was added later too. They realized they had to up the stakes a little bit, so they added some gore here. But yeah, 8 out of 10 for Knowing Deadless Summer. Have you ever seen this one? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe button, share this video. I would appreciate that. I'll be back soon